Welcome, everyone. When should you be uncomfortable and when should you be comfortable? When should you use effort in pursuing your goals and when should you cut back on effort? My guest, Jean Moroney, has a 30-year history of learning that over-efforting can harm you. 30 years of over-efforting, that's immoral.
No. Learning in stages, Bach. Learning in stages.
Sorry. Also, straight out of the gate, calling my guest immoral. Great, good job. Okay, I'm going to ask Jean about her immorality, about about effort and non-effort.
Yes.
Jean is president of Thinking Directions, which helps people improve their productivity by improving their thinking. She works with high performers, and Jean is a former engineer, graduate of MIT, and has a master's degree in psychology from Carnegie Mellon University. And a major influence on Jean's work and thought is the ideas of Ayn Rand. For those of you who are new to me, I'm Dr. Bach Ho, also very influenced by Ayn Rand. I'm a philosophy PhD, wrote a dissertation on selfishness, was a philosophy professor, and have been involved in objectivism for decades. And in the past several years, I've specialized in a healing and growth approach called organic intelligence, which places a lot of value on comfort and less efforting. So the audience for my channel includes people interested in Ayn Rand and people interested in organic intelligence. I hope both audiences will get value from my chat with Jean. And actually, Jean's the one who nudged me towards our speaking more to an organic intelligence audience. So thank you, Jean. So I wanted to talk to you to start with your views on like effort and non-effort and discomfort and comfort, especially, maybe not especially, but including in the context of pursuing very ambitious goals. And I know your thought has been shaped a lot by Ayn Rand, as has mine, and especially by a field called that Ayn Rand identified and named psycho-epistemology. So my plan was just to ask you first, but it seems like heavy duty to start out this way, but I was planning on asking you what is psycho-epistemology and then lead into effort, but feel free to introduce yourself more if you want to before you like tackle that one. So yeah, could I hand it over to you?
Sure, Bach, sure. No
Okay.
problem. And maybe the issue of effort and comfort can introduce psychoepistemology. Maybe that would be the easiest
Yeah.
way. So one thing is, I know you talk about over-efforting, and that's not a term I would use because I would distinguish effort, which I think we need some effort at some level most of the time to be able to just direct our mind. Like even just directing your attention takes a small amount of effort. The thing that I would watch out for is strain. That any kind of feeling that it is a little at your capacity, that is a big red flag that you are actually trying to solve some problem with effort as opposed to with figuring it out, with thinking about it and figuring out what's the source of why is this taking more of my capacity than I actually have right now. And so it's that thinking process, which is what really drew me away from engineering and into psychology. And it's this concept of psychoepistemology that Ayn Rand has. So that was by way of introduction. You want me to just plunge into psychoepistemology, or should we already start talking first?
Yeah, this is free. No, I appreciate the playing around with this. Can I ask you about something that you said?
Sure.
Because you introduced the word capacity, and I don't know. I followed you for years, and I've watched a lot of your free content, and I don't remember how often you say capacity, but capacity is a gigantic concept in organic intelligence.
Mm.
When did you use it because you know OI uses a capacity, or did you use it because you just use it? And what do you mean by it? That's my first, that's an opening.
Right. So it's a broad term, and you always have to say capacity for what, right?
Yeah.
So and you can reach your limit of capacity in many different ways. So so it's not from OI. I have read a
Okay.
tiny bit
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
OI, but really not enough to have a clue. I'm totally relying on you to make
Yeah.
that connection. Yeah. But like for example, a classic case of strain is when you try to do something when you're overloaded. So you've got a million things on your mind and you're trying to just concentrate and do this one thing, and the distractions are coming. You say, no, 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 no. And you start getting a headache of a certain kind. And it's both a mental headache and a physical headache. Do you recognize this experience?
Oh, certainly. Overloaded.
Yes.
And
And what's the capacity that is overloaded?
could you, I'm not trying to get too abstract, but could you define, do you have a quick definition of capacity on the spot that would fit? Or
Well, so in this case, it's the
yeah.
capacity for how many units you can hold in your mind, which is known to be limited, right? So it's in this case,
Okay,
the thing
right,
that's
right.
over capacity is, in objectivism, we call it your crow, which is just the thing that can only hold a few number of units. For people who don't know that term, you may know Miller's the magical number 7 plus or minus 2. If you try to hold too much in mind at one time, there's a real sense of strain. And in fact, for thinking, you need one of the reasons it's good to have just 3 points or one thing to focus on is that leaves you a few extra units so you can think about it without stretching the limits of what your capacity, your mental capacity.
Okay, yeah.
So that's one example of capacity. It's not the only example. There can be a physical limit, there can be an emotional limit. They're not the same.
May I continue? May I ask you more questions?
Sure, of
Yeah,
course.
so this is very interesting. In the moment with you right now, I'm experiencing a lot of different units and thoughts, and which one do I go with? So I'm experiencing.
I've overloaded you. Oh no.
No, but here's what I want to ask. So yeah, you said capacity has different senses, and one sense was mental capacity. How many units can you hold? Let me ask you this. Is it how many units can your mind hold easily, or in abstraction from how difficult it is? Does it not matter how difficult it is to hold the units as long as you can hold it? So you're within capacity if you can hold it, even if it's unpleasant and stressful, or only with ease? Yeah.
So this gets to my view of psychology, because I think that the experience of the strain, or there is always an experience of effort. Even like right now, I'm speaking relatively slowly and I have one point I'm trying to make, but I'm concentrating, right? So I have an experience of effort, but I'm not having an experience of strain right now. This is within the limit of what I can do. So I'm distinguishing those two concepts.
Effort
versus strain, right? Because I think it's important to recognize you're going to need to do something, and you want to be monitoring very closely any affect, because the affective system, which includes both mind-body signals, like overload, I would call that a signal that the mind is not functioning properly. Or conflict is another. It's basically it's a signal that this is not working. Or confusion, it's an affective. It feels bad, and it's an indication of the state of the mind. Pain in your arm, physical pain, is also, there's a strain there, right? There's something going on there. Like if you're doing exercise and you're going beyond what you can do, you start feeling physical pain. The affective system actually starts giving you signals you're doing more than you can really do.
I want to ask you about 5,000 questions. Okay. So
go ahead.
Yeah.
Just be free. Ask what you want.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. You distinguish between effort and strain, and I'm not sure what my question is yet, but but something's coming up in my mind. Um, I think the distinction between enjoyment and non-enjoyment is very fundamental, and I would want to bring it in here and ask. I'm thinking on the spot. Okay, so it's
Sure.
like, so if this conversation with you is mentally demanding because it's ideas, and I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing, and I enjoy it, so I'm enjoying being with you and talking to you. If I didn't like you, or I liked you, but our subject was something I'm not interested in, like, I don't know what, some subject X, but for some reason I chose to talk about it with you, I would find it unpleasant. So when I think of effort, or like what facts motivate the concept effort, it's pain and unpleasantness is more effortful, and pleasure is less effortful because it's pleasure, even if it's occupying mental capacity. I'm not sure where I'm going exactly, but
Okay.
yeah. So does pain versus pleasure, or enjoyment versus non-enjoyment, affect the degree of effort in your understanding of effort? And vis-a-vis strain is my bundle of questions. Is
Right. So I
Yeah,
think
okay,
so
yeah.
I think what we need to talk about the different fundamental kinds of things there are. So when I talk about effort, I'm talking about volitional effort. You're having an intention, and the main way you can exert mental effort is by paying attention, right? When you pay attention to something, or you say, like, if you have a distraction and you say, no, I'm paying attention to this, that is a basic volitional thing that you can do,
But what
right?
if, may I,
Let me make
okay,
the
okay, sorry,
categories
yeah,
first, because I
yeah,
think we
yeah,
need, I think so.
okay, okay.
So like there are other volitional things you can do. You can raise your arm, right? You can ask yourself a question. You can so there are things that you can do with your mind as a matter of choice, and they don't happen automatically. It requires an initiation on your part. And when I talk about effort, I'm thinking about the initiation, and it requires at least some volitional effort to initiate these kinds of things. Now, whenever you do anything, or even sometimes when you do nothing, when you just receive the world, you have affective experiences in response to that. Now, those are automatic. That's the opposite of volitional. So, whether something feels pleasant, or whether it feels unpleasant, or whether it hurts while you're doing it, or whether it feels good, which would be, I would call hurting and feeling good would be like physical type of affect, whereas like joy and suffering would be emotional, or happiness and unhappiness would be emotional. We could talk about what the difference between those two are. I think there is a difference between them, but they're all affective. They're all either good. It's either good news or bad news, right? If it feels good, it's good news. If it feels bad, it's bad news. That stuff is all automatic. You have no control over how you're going to feel in this moment. Over the longer term, you actually do have some control how you're going to feel, because you have it through programming your value system. But in the short range, that's a reaction to what's happening. So I think one of the reasons why the effort and unpleasantness are conflated is if you have very often solved difficult problems by exerting more effort than is comfortable. If you have very frequently done that, effort can actually wind up like triggering body tension. It can trigger body tension is one of the things that can be unpleasant. You can have all kinds of habits where you actually make the exertion of effort be unpleasant. It's not always unpleasant. I think that's one of the things you need to learn to disambiguate, but you could have that experience, and I would totally understand that. Now, but there are almost certainly times when you do it when it's not noticeable that it's unpleasant. As you said, like when you're concentrating here, you may be a little overloaded, but are you straining, Bach? That's what I would ask, because straining doesn't feel good.
Well, there's nervousness in real time with you. Would you call that strain? Or
Well, that's another. So you can be nervous and still functional. Or if you
yeah, yeah,
are like, if you're over the top having a panic attack, you can't, you
yeah.
know, that, but that's actually unrelated to effort, right? In that case, right here, like you,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
Oh, sorry. I'm. By the way, the nervousness is also excitement because also I have a tendency to interrupt people, and I will try not to. And if it, I'm gonna really, you know, standing order on that one. Uh, okay, this is getting deep in my mind. So I opened with when should you effort, when should you cut back on effort, and then you talked about effort versus strain, and then I asked you how does pleasure and pain come in, and then
Right,
you said, yeah, don't conflate effort with pleasure or effort with pain and
right.
non-effort with pleasure. But now, okay, I'm following so far, but now I'm thinking that pleasure and pain is more fundamental. And so shouldn't I have began with when should you be in pain? When should you not be in pain? That would be the more important question than when should you effort and when should you cut back on effort, right?
Well,
So
so actually, I would say that you cannot ask the question, when should you be in pain or when should you be in pleasure? Because it's got a should in there, and should implies volition, and you have no choice
oh,
over whether you're feeling pleasure or pain. That is an automatic result. So the question is, are you feeling, if you're, so maybe this is what you're getting at.
okay.
You can wire your pleasure pain mechanism in reverse, and you can feel pleasure when you're doing things that are really bad for you. Like, for example, overeating. Here's something, a lot of people, I mean, I know we now have drugs for that, but a lot of people just eat whenever they have any emotional distress, and they gain a lot of weight as a result.
Yeah.
And it feels good. And yet it's actually creating a lot of problems for them, right? And it's like the eating, which is a temporary, I mean, I think the reason overeating is so effective is if you have a lot on your mind, it kind of dulls your mind and it's actually harder to think about it with your full stomach and everything, right? So, but they've got the short-term pleasure is now so strong, they get a lot of pleasure out of overeating and it's not good for you. And you can even put a lot of effort into overeating, but it's still not good for you. So there's a mismatch between the pleasure you're experiencing and whether this is in fact good for you.
Okay.
And the same thing can happen with pain, right? The same thing can happen with pain, right?
Wait, could you give me an example with pain?
Sure. Like, so suppose you avoid doing your taxes and you just keep procrastinating on doing your taxes. And every time you procrastinate, every time you avoid doing something you think is going to be unpleasant, the unpleasantness of it grows in your mind until it's like, oh my God, that's going to be so horrible. And a lot of times, this thing you procrastinate on, when you actually go to do it, it takes 10 minutes. Not the taxes. Taxes are going to take more than 10 minutes. But it's not as bad as you thought. You had built this kind of boogeyman, and that is something that you've basically programmed your emotional system by avoiding this thing that you think is going to be horrible. You've actually programmed your emotional system to put out bigger emotions about it than it would have based on the original situation. Your action programs your value system.
The example, could you clarify for me or remind me when I asked you to give an example, what were you giving an example of?
So where painful things can be, something that's not painful could be experienced as very painful. So like taxes was not a good example, but like
Mispredicting, mispredicting how much.
Yeah, how hard something is going to be.
Okay.
Or like I have to pay my bills. Paying bills is actually a fairly, assuming there's money in the bank, paying bills is a pretty innocuous activity, and yet you can turn it into something that you think is going to be painful when in fact it can be rewarding actually to see. Thank you. You can have it be a gratitude exercise. Thank you for providing this service. Thank you for providing the service. Thank you for providing the service.
Okay. That's a mountain achievement, and so that was a knee-jerk reaction. But, okay, so yeah, you said when I posed the question, when should you be in pain? When should you not be in pain? You said no. Well, but you're saying it should, but it's not volitional. Like if someone punches you in the face or something, right? Or if you are a clown hurt you and then you see a clown, of course, so there's no choice about the pain. I didn't mean to imply that you can choose what, how your biology reacts to something. I meant to say, when I asked when should you be in pain, when should you not be in pain, I meant when should you do something
that's painful.
That's not pleasant, right? So like a real practical, like just I want to not cut down on carbs, but I want French fries. So
and it will be unpleasant not to eat the French fries.
Right. So that's what I meant when in my opening, like when should you do what is unpleasant? And when I said when should you put effort in, I mean when should you do what is unpleasant?
Okay, great.
Okay.
Great. Okay, good. Because I appreciate that clarification because because that's very specific. So
yeah. So I'm sorry if I wasted like 15 minutes of our time but anyway, because I feel like I just got back to the beginning of our talk, but whatever. Well, keep going. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I think we understand each other a little bit better now. So that's good. And I do think there have been some terminological issues that we needed to clarify. So I'm not fretting over that.
Yeah.
So let me say that this is a good example of something where there's not a categorical answer to when you should do something that's unpleasant. The reason to do something that's unpleasant is that you are convinced that this action is absolutely the right thing, and that the unpleasantness is an artifact of some old emotional programming. That it's not that this thing is like painful per se. So like, for example, you take the exercise example. Yeah. You should never do an exercise that you experience the pain where it looks like you might be injuring yourself. The answer is never do that. Now, should you do exercise that's mildly uncomfortable? Pretty much all exercise is mildly uncomfortable. And yet, if you want to have a healthy body, you need to do some exercise, right? And the reason you would do the exercise is that you were convinced that this exercise was actually good for your health, would increase your happiness, and is not going to hurt you. So I'll give an example, strength training. So I've done some strength training, and I was completely convinced by the super slow method. Maybe you've heard of it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I got a coach, and I took some super slow coaching with him. And he pushed me too far, and my neck, I've had a problem with my neck. That was the first of my things where I learned about putting in too much effort and ignoring the pain signals 30 years ago. My neck can go out. And even though he thought I had good form, I would wind up with tremendous neck pain. And then I basically had pain in my entire body for 2 days after working out. And that's not, that is not what's supposed to happen after a workout. So I stopped working with him, and I adjusted my process to something that it seemed like I could sustain. So I put it still was a lot of effort, but it was stuff that I was absolutely convinced was not hurting me, was actually making me stronger, and it did make me stronger. And that's the you don't always know in advance that it's not going to injure you, but you always need to think that it's not going to injure you.
Yes. Okay, I'm with you with there's no categorical answer to when should you do something that is unpleasant.
Yes.
One clear-cut case is if you're going to be physically injured, then avoid, unless it's some kind of weird emergency. But yeah, right.
So then there is one also mental standard, right?
Okay.
Which is this is an issue of ambitiousness, because there's always a certain amount that you can do given your current emotional system, your current motivational system. There are a certain number of things that you can do with, where you can get into the flow zone, say, relatively easily. You've got enough skill, You can do this kind of thing. Like you can do, I mean, this happens with people with exercise and strength training. They can do 10 push-ups or 10 curls or 10 whatever it is. There's a certain amount they can do at a certain weight that is actually not that hard for them. And they can do that fairly easy. It's not that uncomfortable. Now, of course, what happens if you do the exact same exercise program without increasing the weight so that it's slightly uncomfortable, in the end, it stops actually building your muscles. It stops actually doing anything. So unless you have a goal to get better, if you have a goal to get better, then it is going to be uncomfortable because you're going to be going beyond your current limits. And it's figuring out how to do that in a way that is safe and sustainable and will build in success and pleasure along the way. That's what a lot of my work is about. Can I ask you a question, Bach?
Oh, yeah.
Because I have a sense that what I'm saying is bringing up some contradictions in your head based on your understanding of organic intelligence. That's what that's. I'm reading that from your body language.
No, you have like telepathy. Yes.
So it might be helpful for you to just air those because you have a lot of listeners who have that exact same objection.
Right. But in my head, there was also this is gene time, not, so I've been thinking about organic intelligence and how an organic intelligence person might reply, but then also, do I bring that in or is it just, let's focus on gene because this is not about, but we're here.
But right? I think this is to make the bridge, right? I mean, I think they're going to have those objections. They're not going to get as much out of it. You get to speak for them.
So let me be a devil's advocate.
Good.
Okay, so extemporaneously, from an organic intelligence perspective, organic intelligence values comfort a lot, and there's a long lecture stuff on that, but I don't have to get into that. But one thing I would say is the culture that the idea of getting out of your comfort zone or doing things that are uncomfortable, even in bite-sized, incremental, careful ways, will tend to get you good at being uncomfortable, which some people prize because they think discomfort is good, and that may come from certain philosophical or religious upbringing where suffering is good. But according to organic intelligence, you actually grow optimally by digging into the comfort zone instead of trying to play at the edge of the comfort, like the edge of comfort, discomfort, and you just keep playing on that edge, and then you grow through that edge. Instead, you sink deep into the comfort zone, which may be alarming at first because that means you're enjoying your fries, you're enjoying your bourbon, you're enjoying your cigarettes, you're enjoying risky sexual activity because of disease. but it can seem counterintuitive at first to just go into pleasure, but with some guardrails, the point is you dig into pleasure, comfort. There's one more thing, which is orientation, connection to the environment through the senses, but let's later. So that you get good at pleasure and comfort so that you can then organically do what was uncomfortable, do what would have been uncomfortable comfortably, so that you got good at pleasure, you feel better and better. I feel like going for a walk. I feel like doing a push-up. I feel like doing the dishes. But that happens organically because you got so good at pleasure that your biology furnished the ability to do something pleasurably or organically, as opposed to, yes, it's a little uncomfortable doing a walk or a little uncomfortable doing the dishes, but just do, Harry, one dish at a time, and then an hour later come back and do or something, or just do something small and then a little bit uncomfortable and then grow through. I think one idea from organic intelligence would say, instead of trying to grow through careful, bite-sized discomfort, grow through really digging into pleasure and comfort, and that will be the path to doing things that you think would be uncomfortable but are now pleasurable.
Okay. So
Okay.
there's one big area of alignment which I haven't talked about, which is related to what you're talking about here, which is
Okay.
the importance of pleasure in your life. So what I'm not sure, but I could imagine that what you're describing would be a very important antidote for someone who had really diminished pleasure, that they had discounted pleasure and had thought, no, no pain, no gain. It's all about, if someone who really was focused on, no, it's suffering, suffering is necessary. If you really had that focus, I could imagine that this would in fact be very important to kind of reset that pleasure is critical to your life and is critical to your health. So I just want to be clear that I don't focus just on the discomfort. What I focus on is when you set a goal, you need to bring it in so that whatever task you do, you need to make sure that doing that task is going to be at worst uncomfortable. Ideally, it's uncomfortable to get over a hump and then you're in the flow zone. But for sure, the doing of the task is going to bring pleasure, and that you need to build that in at every time scale. Like if you have an ambitious goal and you work on it for 2 hours right now, like I'm going to be rehearsing a speech for an hour later today, and it is going to be, it's terrible right now. It's terrible. So, right. I mean, it's a whole new rehearsal process for me.
Okay.
It's going to be very uncomfortable, and I'm going to, videotape myself and then look at it and see what's wrong. And as part of that, I'm going to build in celebrating the successes that I see, like that I've made this decision about this motion and that works, or I've made this decision about where my voice is going to be and this works. So I'm going to actually build into the process a whole lot of celebration and a whole lot of explicit learning where I see, I'm so glad I put in this hour, even though, boy, there's a lot of work to do. I'm so glad I put in this hour because I learned this and this and this and this and this. And that is going to give me, even though it was uncomfortable, is going to give me a lot of pleasure associated with that task. And that is needed over the long term so that I don't have resistance to doing the rehearsal, so that I actually expect to learn stuff, so that I don't have to manhandle the process. There's a whole new process for me. So I'm going to have to do a lot of meta level stuff. But the goal is to learn this process in a healthy way that is built on pleasure so that it becomes a skill faster and it's something I can then call on in the future. And in that regard, I think there's a parallel to what you are talking about.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when you
Go ahead.
When you say built on pleasure, okay, the rehearsing of the speech you're going to do later today, you said you will be uncomfortable. You will feel,
for sure.
So there's going to be pain. I don't mean
Well,
high pain,
it's not
but
pain.
I
I make a big distinction between pain and unpleasantness and uncomfortableness, right? So pain, you got to reserve that word. Pain is really an important signal. So I really distinguish pain from discomfort, just to be clear. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
like when you're awkward, you're uncomfortable, but you're not in pain. It's just, ah!
Okay. So you will be uncomfortable.
Yes.
Significantly later today.
Yeah, I mean, it will go in and out, but yes. Mm-hmm.
And the pleasure, when you said building in pleasure, you mean you're building in, you have some way of building in pleasurable moments, like scaffolding within, like.
Yeah, it's going to be uncomfortable moments. And then I'm going to laugh about it, about how uncomfortable it was. That will be pleasurable.
Okay.
Right? And then I'm going to watch it and I'm going to see good things that I did. In fact, now that I mentioned it, so this is so interesting. So this is a new rehearsal process that I'm learning.
Okay.
And I was told, and now that I'm really glad we've had this discussion, Bach, because I'm going to remember, I was told that when you watch your video, only look for the things that work. So, right.
Can you do that?
Well, what you can do is by your attention, right? Take some effort. right? You can't just sit there and be reactive, because if you're reactive, you'll point out every bad thing that happened. But you can say, yeah, I'm looking for the good things. Oh, that wasn't one. Okay, but that's good. And that wasn't one. Oh, okay, that's good. Right. So that you still may notice them, but you won't pay attention to them. Right. The thoughts will still come up, but
Right.
you will focus your attention on, oh, that works. Oh, I like that line. Oh, whatever. And that's how, by where you put your attention makes a huge difference. There's a lot of hype about having a positive mental attitude, which is not crazy, right? If you focus on the values you're getting as opposed to the bad things that are happening, if you focus on the value you're getting as opposed to the threats that you're avoiding, that's really the best way to put it. That activates a completely different context. That activates mostly positive emotional experience, and it makes it actually easier to be creative and easier to think clearly and many other things.
Yes. So,
And it takes effort.
and it takes effort. Okay, so here's from an organic intelligence perspective. Okay, so organic intelligence would say yes. For many, most, or virtually all people, the attention has a tendency to notice what's bad or what's wrong with my performance. And yes, it takes effort paying attention to focus on what's right about your performance instead of what's wrong. What piano notes did I play correctly? What instead of what are my errors? And organic intelligence is saying something quite radical, which is it's possible to grow your capacity to be at a pleasurable, comfortable baseline instead of trending towards discomfort and then pleasure and then discomfort and then pleasure.
Right. So part that I agree with is
Okay.
to even exert effort, you need to be at a certain positive level. Right. If you're in well, that's actually, let me take that back. That is not true. But to grow, like if you want to set a goal where you're going to grow, that's going to require this very conscious process, you need to have certain things about your life in order a little bit, right? You need to have a base on which you can grow. And from what you're describing, it sounds like organic intelligence is trying to help you create like the base of and it's okay to call it a base of comfort on which you can grow, right? I mean, I don't have, it makes me nervous to hear that it's, enjoy the bourbon, enjoy the cigarettes and stuff like that. That makes me nervous as you describe it that way. I'd be happy to double down on some positive things. It does make me nervous to double down on pleasures that you have reason to believe are actually somewhat problematical and that can be, what is the right word for it? They can wind up being compulsive in a certain way. So there's some pleasures that are compulsive, and that is, doubling down on that is just going to make the compulsion worse.
No, I'm with you. Can I offer a quick maybe an argument for or thought from organic intelligence? So that is tricky area, the area of things that may seriously harm you over time.
Yes.
So I deliberately didn't choose like certain drugs that are extremely harmful, but so one idea from organic intelligence is if you have a context where someone's been trying to quit an addiction, like I'm going to choose something that's more middle of the road, like carbs, sugar. Okay.
Okay. Sure. Yeah.
If they've tried a bunch of different approaches to resolve the addiction and none of them have worked, from an organic intelligence perspective, one possible thing that's happening is that all the effort that is used to resist the sugar is keeping intensity too high in the biology, too uncomfortable, and the shame high and the self-hatred high. And so if the person could fully enjoy the sugar and go even go faster for the donut. Instead of trying to resist the donut, I can't, and I have to have it. Just go to it faster, so you skip out on all that intense resistance. If you double down on the pleasure, at least in a certain range of non-emergency cases, if you
Yes.
double down on pleasure and really enjoy the donut as much as you can, try to enjoy, no shame, just go for the donut, eat a lot, just enjoy. That will lower the intensity around the addiction, which makes it more likely to you quit. So you quit by getting into it, but that's in a certain range of cases.
So yeah, so that's
Okay.
interesting, and I understand why that would make sense,
Okay.
because the right, because the baggage that's been associated with trying to stop eating donuts
Yeah.
is now making you miserable. And if you eat donuts, I mean, I think is it all right if we just consider the eating of donuts to be emotional eating? That you do it to feel better? Does that sound
No, go. You can stipulate. No, that's fine with me. Yeah.
right? Okay, because I think that's very typically
Yeah.
that's not the only reason people overeat, but it's like a very common reason for overeating. Right.
Yeah.
And if what it is the moment you start thinking about, oh, I need a donut, you start, guilting yourself and shaming yourself and tensing up and all that, then that's actually gonna what you're saying is short circuit that by having a donut. You're more likely to have one donut rather than 15 donuts because you've got yourself so upset. It takes more donuts to kind of feel better. Right?
Yeah.
And I could totally believe that. Yeah.
You're trying to maximize how much pleasure you get from the donut, maximize how much pain, maximize how much pleasure leading up to the donut.
Yeah, and short circuit this old baggage that definitely. So you and I are united in thinking that the baggage that you get about guilting yourself and shaming yourself over not doing things is part of the problem. I totally agree that that is part of the problem. And this organic intelligence is a clever way to try to deal with that part of the problem. That's how I've seen it.
Yeah, and just to clarify, organic intelligence is not saying whatever you're addicted to, no matter what,
Yes.
always enjoy it and never use willpower. It's just that, but there is a strong case in a subset of cases for enjoying it, because when willpower is actually hurting you.
Yeah. So, well,
Yeah.
and it's so, this is a good example where we're objectivists, right? So we've been trained by Ayn Rand. You got to be really careful about how you talk about these things.
Yeah.
And I think it's important not to blame willpower. I think it's important to blame a really mistaken idea about how to make this change. It's a process that is just wrong. It's a process that doesn't take into account your actual needs and your need for pleasure. And it's the duty process basically is what it is, which is everybody thinks you should just make yourself do it. If you think this is the right thing you should do, you should just make yourself do it. And that is part of the problem. It's treated as like an out of context absolute that you shouldn't eat that donut. And it's not an out of context absolute. And that's not the way to think about it.
So, yes. Okay. Don't blame
willpower.
Blame the
decision process that led you to exert that willpower.
Right, because you want to seek knowledge about your organism, how organisms work.
Yes.
And causality in relation to if I use willpower in this way, what will happen if I use willpower in this way?
Yes. And how do I retrain is it possible to retrain my emotions in this regard so that so I don't have this huge conflict over eating donuts, because that really degrades your quality of life. If you're like every time you think of doing something, you get into a total conflict state, that's a miserable place to be.
Okay, so how on your average day, how much of the time are you uncomfortable? if that's not too personal, but I just want. Can you give me?
That's an interesting question. Well, so well, I have a. So right at the moment, I've been dealing with a physical injury, so I've been uncomfortable for a while. But I'm working that problem. But I've been uncomfortable the last few days because of a physical injury. So it's hard for me to like put myself in that state. But I wouldn't normally say that. Normally, so here's my straight answer. Most work is not uncomfortable. And certainly creative work, for the most part, needs to be actually pretty comfortable. The kind of work that I sometimes do that I would say is uncomfortable door to door is something that I do a sprint for. And I got this concept from a woman named Brooke Castillo. She calls them dread sprints. I don't call them dread sprints because that's too negative. But like, for example, if I need to clear my email inbox, this is not the most pleasant thing for me to do. I would much rather go work on a book or work on this speech I'm telling you about or prepare a class. I mean, there are a lot of things that I would rather do than systematically clear my email inbox, right? And it requires a real effort of will for me to say, okay, at such and such a time, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do that. I'm not going to feel like doing it. I guarantee I won't feel like doing it. But I am going to make it be a relatively short amount of time. So I do an hour and 15-minute sprint is what I do, with 3 short breaks in it. Every 25 minutes, there's a very short break. And I started out by saying to myself, I actually do a little process where I say, yeah, I really don't feel like doing this. And why do I think this is a good idea? And I remind myself of all the values of, how important it is for me to be responsive and responsible. And, backlogs create a lot of conflict for me. And so I will have an hour and 15-minute process that has 15 minutes at the beginning where I'm really deliberately activating a context of why I'm doing this and why this is really selfish. And then I will work during that hour and 15 minutes to not tense up but keep on, like respond. So there's a lot of concentration involved. And then when I'm finished, I'll celebrate. And I think at most, the rule of thumb that Brooke gave when she described this is at most 30% of your work could be like this. I think that's about right. I think, a couple hours a day of that is probably the most you can do. The other work needs to be more in your comfort zone.
Okay, suppose you don't feel like clearing your inbox.
Mm-hmm.
It's an hour and 15 minutes of discomfort, right? An hour.
I mean, it's not like every second of it is discomfort, but I sure don't want to when I start. Okay. And and I want to stop every time the timer goes on the breaks, and I say, no, okay, I'm going to keep doing this. It's okay. I can handle a little discomfort and not knowing what to do. That's actually a mantra I've used in those situations.
What happened? Okay, you're about to start clearing the email inbox, but you don't feel like it. And suppose you have a sudden impulse to
eat a donut.
Eat a donut. Okay, eat a donut. Yes.
Right.
And you have one on the counter. What would you do? How would you think about that?
Well, that's why I have this 15-minute. Well, it doesn't have to be 15 minutes. It's at least 5 minutes at the beginning of the sprint. The way I start the sprint is with this gets to psycho-epistemology, so maybe I'll explain what that is in just a second.
Yeah.
I actually start with thought work, which is, handwritten in my journal. And I have a particular tactic that I use. The particular tactic I use in this particular case is that I got from the same woman. It's called the self-coaching model. And it captures my current motivation. You can do that also by complaining. But then there's a recovery practice where you actually then reorient to values. And you do that. And so suppose I were doing it as complaining. I don't want to do this email. I want to eat that donut instead. And this task, it's impossible for me to do this right now because I'm just not in the mood and I don't want to do it. That would be the first pass. The second pass, I would go look at that and say, the reason I have a desire for a donut is because this is uncomfortable and that would make me feel better. It's not because I actually want or need a donut. Yeah, of course it's uncomfortable. I predicted it would be uncomfortable. And I want to remember all the great things that happen as a result of doing this regularly every day. This is really good for me. And I want to change my value hierarchy and I want to reinforce that staying on top of this stuff is really good for me. And by doing that, I can get myself into a more positive frame. So I go in not from, oh, you're not allowed, you can't eat the donut, you have to do this. That's not the energy that I bring to the task. The energy I bring is a kind of calm determination. This is important. I can handle this. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but that's okay, because this is important, because this is helping me stay connected to my clients. This is helping me this. This is helping me this. Okay, I can do this. Let's start. And so I come in with this kind of calm determination with a very cognitive focus on values. And as a result, I will see the value as I go, as opposed to fighting the unpleasantness as I go.
Wait, are you saying that if you're about to do the email inbox clearing and then you have a desire for the donut, you would do thinking, like hardcore thinking?
Yes.
That sounds horrifying to me. That sounds horrifying. Sorry, that's my knee jerk.
Oh, well, so then you need to learn thinking on paper. Have you ever taken one of my thinking on paper classes?
I'm gonna be real with you. I have yelled at you in my mind because I've heard the thinking on paper, the 1 minute, well, first
Let me explain to your audience what thinking on paper is, and then you can yell at me, okay? You can yell at me in real life, okay? All right. So what thinking on paper is, and I just have to say, it doesn't work for everyone. So you might need a slightly different tactic because it doesn't work for every single person, okay? But what it is instead of doing the thinking in your head, you either on paper and pencil, which is how I do it, or on the computer, you switch to writing out the thoughts in full sentences and paragraphs. And so, and this easily lends itself to then having a structured thinking process, which, a standard list of questions or a standard list of tasks, which the self-coaching model is a standard list of those things, but there's actual thinking on paper as part of it. So that's what it is. So yell at me about thinking on paper.
It's not pleasurable, Jane. It's not. I want to do what is pleasurable, which is eat the donut. Yes. I don't have a long argument. That's my one.
Okay, well, I'm gonna. So two things. One is, first of all, so again, we're both interested in Ayn Rand.
Yeah. No. Yes.
Okay. And so, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but how do you handle the concern that this is just emotionalism? That this is, and do you think emotionalism is destructive? Because
right.
Because that's the reason I don't eat the donut. It's because I see emotionalism as destructive, and I need some way to reprogram my values in a constructive way, without forcing myself and without penalizing myself.
Right. Okay.
But I actually don't want to eat the donut. I want to go by my actual rational judgment about what would be a better thing to do right now.
Yes. Okay, good. Thank you for putting me on the spotlight. Seriously, thank you. Am I advocating emotionalism in saying go for the donut? Okay, so emotionalism would be I guide myself based on my feelings as opposed to reason, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, right. So I think that no, I don't support emotionalism fundamentally, but I think it's rational to to do what you feel like a lot of the time, and that can be rationally grounded, because that's your guide to pleasure.
Well,
so if I feel like having I think that.
So let me sanction that a little bit. Is that okay if I just
yeah.
I mean, sanction in the positive way. I realize that word can be used two different ways, right? Yeah. So it's definitely the case that for a normal, healthy life, most of the time, reason and emotion are in alignment, and that you cannot figure out what is in your rational self-interest without noticing your emotion. You make a decision about what you think is the right thing to do, and you notice your emotional reaction. And the usual case is your emotional reaction is in alignment with that. That's the usual case, and that's good, and that then motivates the action. And if it's not in alignment, it could be that the emotion is right, or it could be that the reason is right. It's not the case that you should just ignore the emotion. The emotion is actually very important. And part of what I hear you saying is that organic intelligence is helping people listen to those emotions and take them seriously. And that's something that's new for a lot of people.
Well, the point I made wasn't specifically organic intelligence. It would be in line with it, and organic intelligence has a lot of more details.
Sure.
But what I meant was just, I think I was just trying to be, I wasn't appealing to heavy organic intelligence theory. It's just thinking pretty simply and commonsensically. I feel like a donut. I feel like ice cream. I feel like going for a walk. I feel like playing video games. Part of happiness is doing what you feel like doing, but not as the fundamental trumping decision procedure, but
Right.
just as a, like, I mean, like in this conversation, I kind of say what I feel like saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not gonna, like, if I have like some X-rated thought, I'm not just gonna, but I'm not calculating. I can't possibly calculate what I'm gonna say to you next. I'm just kind of, it's both. It's like we have to talk, but then I have to,
Right. You don't want to micromanage the conversation.
So if I feel like okay, I want to clear up, I need to clear out my email inbox, but I feel like having a donut. I think it's totally simply valid to go for the donut, unless you feel some context where you're under threat of dying because of obesity. But I just mean, like, just living life. You just make these decisions on feeling within the wider context of knowing that. I mean, you have to know, like, am I allergic to peanuts? Does it don't have peanuts, et cetera, et cetera. But
well, so I guess maybe part of the issue here is the choice of donut, because I think, like for me, donuts, it would be a big mistake for me to eat a donut in all cases, in the sense that I function much better on a low carb diet. Now, this is not to say that I always eat a lot low carb, but donuts in particular, I get the sugar high in a crash. So, donuts are really, they're like a red flag to me. So it may be partly the example, Bach. But the more important thing is, I think what you're trying to get at is, what is the role of emotions? And there is a role when you have a positive feeling about something and a positive emotion about something. That only happens if it is stored as a value in your memory banks. That things that have been programmed as values in your memory banks can create positive emotions. So donuts could be stored as a really positive thing. They aren't for me, but I totally get how they can sometimes be, like, really tempting. And I do think, like, for some things, like, here's a kind of an odd example, but maybe it will help clarify this. One of the exercises that I have people do for developing emotional resilience is called 3 Good Things. And it's every day. I got this from Martin Seligman, positive psychology, the leader of that. Every day, right? Well, he does it as gratitude, 3 things you're grateful for. I do it as 3 good things that happened in the last 24 hours. Or, my program is the Thinking Lab, and my head coach, Lynn Zinzer, does it as, and I now do it as, 3 good things you did in the last 24 hours. And you write down these 3 things. And I did that exercise for years. It's not the exercise I'm doing right now. And I noticed that going to my Toastmasters meeting, I haven't been in Toastmasters in a while, but going to my Toastmasters meeting almost always showed up on the list. I'm like, wow, why is Toastmasters showing up? I didn't realize I liked Toastmasters that much. And it got me to sit and think about, why do I like Toastmasters so much? And I was pulled to, I made a point. I was committed, I was consciously committed, but I made a point of making every meeting. And I actually learned some things about myself. Part of the reason I loved that club is it was a really different group of people, really different interests, different group. That was helpful. It was social. I worked all by myself most of the time. It was, I was talking to people, right? And I actually did get a lot of skill in speaking. And it was a lot of fun. It's really fun to connect with an audience. I was unaware of how much value I got from Toastmasters until I did that exercise. And I think that the kinds of things you're talking about, of actually noticing what you're desiring, that's a learned skill. It's a learned skill, is to notice the things that you desire and understand why you desire them. And it's very, very, very important. So I think this is an area where we're aligned. And I think, but I guess the thing I think we may not be aligned is, you can have values programmed in that give you a tremendous amount of desire and a tremendous amount of pleasure that are in fact not either they've been misprogrammed due to some conscious thinking mistake, right? Like, so for example, second-handedness, that's something Objectivist notes. Some people really they get very focused on approval, right? And they get a big charge from approval, and they have a big desire for approval. And oh my God, that so screws up your life if you get all focused around approval. And yet if they go with what they want, if they go with what's going to give them pleasure, they're just going to keep seeking approval. And so at a certain point, when you realize this is not good for me, then you need to actually need to wind up reprogramming what are your values. And that's the process that I'm focused on, is if you see, and that this also happens when you set a goal, right? If you set an ambitious goal, something you've never done before, the result may sound very desirable, but the steps that it takes to get there are not going to feel at all desirable. And you actually need to learn to develop the values along the way. Like, for example, starting a business. You need to learn to like marketing. If you don't learn to like marketing and actually get excited about figuring out a target market and getting a slogan, if you don't learn to really enjoy that, you're not going to succeed in business, because you got to like marketing if your business is going to succeed. And that's what I'm interested in, is how do you have certain things that you value now. And if you have a goal that is not already totally aligned with the values you have now, how do you, without strain, without duty, without pressure, how do you reprogram your value hierarchy to go after that big, ambitious goal?
And you're saying you can, I want to ask you, I don't want to forget my question, but now there's another, do you ever veg out? On the
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing I do is I read silly novels, and I do that when things are going well. I do that for short amounts of time. And when I lose it, I do it for hours at a time, and it takes me a while to get myself back. And I lose myself.
Yeah, but you gave your example was cognitive reading. I mean, laying on the couch, your tongue is out, there's saliva, and there's nothing. I mean, really, I'm curious.
That's not my style, but I tell you, reading novels is, they're pretty silly novels.
I think, I'm with you. I think what I was getting at was
they're pure pleasure. I assure you, Bach. Pure pleasure. And I do it with TV too, but not TV as much as I haven't in a long time binge watched TV. So
I think I appreciate that. The one motivation was that Objectivism, Ayn Rand, known for advocating rationality, and I think in some people's minds the association is, do I always have to be thinking? So that's why I wanted to ask, do you ever just do the tongue out? Tongue out is a kind of extreme graphic thing, but I just want to get quickly at an image to indicate.
Oh, well, so I have things that I do specifically because they are more physical, and it's really important for me. Like cooking. I am not happy if I don't cook several nights a week. And there may be a TV show on while I do that. But this is essentially a sensory perceptual activity, right? This is not a thinking activity for me. Yes. This is a sensory mechanical perceptual activity. And this is a source of pleasure for me.
Unless it's a new recipe, but
I don't do new recipes.
Okay,
I cook things my mother taught me. I cook. It's good old country cooking. I do not experiment in anything in cooking. It's totally old stuff that my mother taught me years ago. I'm actually a total It's very funny, actually. I'm totally uninterested in experimentation and cooking. But
Right.
I do
Okay.
that, and then I play tennis, which I think is hilarious. You know, you hit the ball and it goes over the net, and this is like completely new to me. And I just love that. And it's not, it actually probably needs to be a little bit more intellectual than it is, because I'm like, you know, in playing games, I have to kind of focus on, yeah, you're supposed to try to win.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh, this is fun. That one didn't go over.
Okay. So yeah. So
So you absolutely need some things that are non-thinking, but
pleasure, simple
yeah,
pleasure, and really
simple pleasure. Petting the cats,
isn't.
brushing the cats. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because when you were talking about serious thinking about inbox versus donuts and achieving high level goals, there was a lot of cogitation. I just want to make sure. Well, I just wanted to verify that enjoying life and relaxing and doing nothing, quote unquote, are also an important part of life in your approach.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's so.
Or
Right. So the main thing that I teach people is productivity, achieving ambitious goals.
yeah.
So that's in the work portion of life, right? That's
Okay.
in the work portion of life. So that's the main thing that so when you're interviewing me, that's the context I'm in, right?
Oh,
So
because I'm
just to
not
be
interviewing you
clear,
on how to lie on a couch, right? I'm interviewing you about
right?
productivity and thinking and okay, right.
Yeah.
So that's
The thing is, when I lie on the couch, I fall asleep. So do I fall asleep reading novels at night? Relatively often, yes. But anyway,
um
so
okay, achieving. Could you speak to? Hmm.
so
I'm interested in
yeah.
your selling yourself. How is your approach distinctive from other productivity approaches, or is that a question that's interesting to you? I'm interested in that question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
yes, it's totally fine.
Yeah.
So why don't I, since we mentioned the term
Yeah, we
psychoepistemology
should
early
go.
on,
I mean,
why don't I
yeah.
at least say what it is? Because that is what is really distinctive to my approach.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
so this is a term that Ayn Rand came up with, which what it means. This is her definition. She says it's the study of man's cognitive processes. So that means thinking, cogitating, whatever, from the aspect of the interaction between the conscious mind, which is, where you judge and pay attention and ask questions, and the automatic functions of the subconscious, which, as far as I'm concerned, that means the memory affect system. I don't think there's anything in the subconscious other than memory, which is, stored awareness of entities and concepts and stored action type things and stored experiences, and the affect system, which is the thing that generates pleasure and pain. And so it's the interaction between the conscious mind, the automatic functions of memory and affect. And psychoepistemology is specifically about thinking. And this is what I got interested in when I left engineering and went to psychology. So I studied cognitive development at Carnegie Mellon. It's an experimental psychology program. It's not a clinical psychology program. I'm not a clinical psychologist. And the thing that interested me about this is I was always interested in thinking, right? As an engineer, I was doing a lot of problem solving. And it interested me to see how you manage that process and make it more effective. The thing that I realized after I started teaching it, so I was in the Objectivist Graduate Center in 1994, 1995, 1996. This was a full-time graduate program that only existed for a couple of years, but I was one of the lucky people who was in it. And we did defining terms with Harry Binswanger. We did confusion papers with Leonard Peikoff. We did, Peter Schwartz had a writing class. He taught us how to condense, essentialize written work. And so I learned a tremendous number of thinking skills from them. And I started teaching them. And as I started teaching them and started just explaining, like overload is a problem for thinking, right? If you have too many things in your head, you can't actually manage the interaction. You don't have room for stuff to come up from your data banks. And as I started doing that, I realized, oh my God, I need to talk about emotional overload. And that led me into actually teaching people about emotions. And then in parallel to this, I had my first big problem with learning about over efforting, which was my neck went out and I couldn't type for a year. This is a long time ago. And I discovered the Alexander technique, which is all about managing action by your attention and not, how do I say this, getting out of your own way and using your body in a way that doesn't include undue tension. And what I realized in all three of these, cognition, emotion, motivation, and action, you need to very carefully adjust where your attention is so that you can take advantage of what's stored and do what's easy, but not activate any chains, any habits, or any associations that are going to send you off in the wrong direction. And so my whole view of psychology is that you need to manage this interaction between the conscious mind and the memory affect system. And that's how I look at everything. Action, motivation, and cognition.
Action, motivation, and cognition. And motivation you associate with affect?
Right. Well, it's emotions, right? It's really the stored values create emotions.
Action, motivation, and
cognition. And the reason thinking has such a prominent part is the way that you reprogram your values to change your motivation is conceptual. And the way, if you have bad habits, like if you have terrible posture, right? Which I had a lot of tension in my shoulders. I'm still working this problem. You undo this in layers, but it's by learning how to conceptualize the process and use a concept. So like with the Alexander technique, you need to let your neck be free and let your head kind of sit on top of your spine. And that's something you learn to do conceptually to be able to trigger into the built-in body mechanics.
What do you mean learning to let your head rest on the top of your spine? What do you mean that it's something that you learn to do conceptually? What do you mean by conceptually? Right. Okay.
What I mean is, this is probably overcomplicated to bring in, but I'll try to explain it so it's not mysterious. So the Alexander technique, this is F.M. Alexander in like 1920, came up with this process to help performance artists use their body more effectively. So like you don't lose your voice when you're talking, that kind of thing. And what he found is that this is going to be video on your podcast, or is it audio only?
Video too.
Okay. So your head, which rests on the top of the spine, if the muscles at the back of your head are tight, it like presses down on your spine. And if it presses down on your spine, this actually causes all the muscles in your back and your neck to tighten up. And this is one of the big sources of back trouble. One of the reasons to go to the Alexander technique is if you have any kind of chronic back problem. That's why I went to it, because of my neck problem. And it turns out that this becomes completely habitual. You don't even realize you're doing it. So like if you see people whose heads are always like back like this, or whose heads are always forward, their head is not resting right on the top of their spine. And that's probably chronic, and they don't even realize they're doing it. But you can see it in people's body language that when their posture is bad, you can see that it's like tight there. And how do you learn to not do that? The way that you do it with an Alexander teacher is the Alexander teacher very lightly touches the muscles that are too tight and says, let go here. And when they touch it, it's like you can hear that muscle, and you can send it a voluntary muscle instruction. Let go there, and it lets go a little bit. It also lets go a little bit to the touch. And you start learning to connect with a word with your word and your thinking to places in your body. I actually talk to my neck, and I talk to my ankles, and I talk to, like, one of the exercises I do is I actually have the muscles from my leftmost, my finger and my pinky, my ring finger and pinky. I think up the outside of my arm, up the back, all the way up to the side of my neck, to the bottom of my head. I actually do this every morning when I come to my desk. I do this up my right side, up my left side, up, and then I do it up the front. to release my neck all the way from my fingers. And this helps me sit at my desk without having extra tension in my arms when I write at my desk or when I type. And it's something that I do by a deliberate conceptual effort in order to get what is, what you don't necessarily have direct control over until you've trained yourself to do it.
Conceptual effort in that you're instructing via thoughts as opposed to muscular effort.
Right. The thoughts are what in effect winds up triggering the muscular effort. I've had to learn how to do that by paying attention to things. Right. So it's by paying attention and rehearsing. Like, this is an exercise that I know, and I rehearse and I put my attention on these parts of my body. And that's how I can actually have less tension in my body, which is very good.
So can I go back to the psycho-epistemology?
Sure.
So, because that's what you wanted to introduce, right? The big.
Yes, I know. And then I kind of put us off in another direction. Apologies.
It's the study of cognition from the perspective of the interaction between the consciousness and the subconscious, right?
The actions of the conscious mind. So, right. So there are those are volitional actions that you can do consciously. So it's not conscious experience, right? It's the volitional actions you can do, the actions of the conscious mind. And the automatic functions of the subconscious, which includes throwing up ideas, throwing up emotions.
Okay, so the study of cognition from the perspective of the interaction between volitional actions of the conscious mind and the
automatic functions of the subconscious, which is basically throwing up ideas, throwing up emotions.
Actually, what is the subconscious?
Well, so that's a matter of debate within the objectivist circles and everyone else. So my view is it's only two things. It's memory, and by memory I mean very simply there's presumably in the brain, but I don't worry about that. Presumably with neurons, when you see an object that you recognize, that object is something you've seen before, and that has created a node in some memory banks in your brain. And when you recognize it, it's because that node has been stimulated and you have a little mini image of it. So, there's things that you've seen before get stored as nodes in your brain. And those nodes get connected together. They can get connected with a node for a word for a concept can connect them. Or experiences can connect them. So if you tell me some really dramatic experience you had in childhood, a really strong emotional experience, a vignette from when you were real little. Yeah.
In Vietnam, I happened upon a crocodile farm, and I was on this narrow walkway with no railing. And I just thought I could fall over into the pit of thousands of crocodiles.
Right. Okay. So you have a vivid image of that. I can hear it, right? You have an image that's got the picture, the bridge, you being on the bridge, probably feeling a little bit unsafe.
Yes.
And the emotional reaction and the thoughts, all of that little vignette is stored in your memory banks and can get triggered and come up, and you can put it in words. How old were you when it happened?
I don't know, 7.
Okay, so you had language in any case, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Though that's stored in memory, and vignettes like that together, there was affect at the time, right? There was a fear at the time. That's stored. That vignette is stored with a negative affect, and you got a little tense even when you told it. You had an emotional reaction when you told it, right? That's a memory. So that's memory. And I think I call it the memory affect system because affect is part of memory. The experience you have gets put into memory, and memory can reproduce that affect, but the affect can also be some affect is straight from the body. But emotions are from memory.
Can you give me an example of some affect is straight from the body? You mean someone punches you or you eat lasagna?
Yeah, right. Or you cut your finger. That's affect that's straight from the body. Hunger is an unpleasant experience, and that's straight from the body, right?
But so when you said that your view of the subconscious, so I asked you, what's the subconscious? You said within the objectivist community, there's a debate, and then your view is its memory and affect, the memory system and the affect system. It felt like to me that that's a later developed view of the subconscious, but doesn't that presuppose some understanding of the subconscious, that a more general understanding that I was asking for? Like, it sounds like you were offering a more
So,
sophisticated account of it, but I just wanted to know like what.
well, so the thing is that people use the term subconscious to refer to everything that they don't understand about everything in the mind. And I think that it's actually all very simple. So, like, people talk about subconscious actions or subconscious integration. I don't think there is any such thing. So Leonard Peikoff has a characterization of subconscious in OPAR, where he says it's the sum of all conscious content of all material that is stored. That this is a paraphrase, that had been in consciousness but is not in consciousness now. But that's just memory. But if you read, people talk about the subconscious as if it's got a little motor in there and a little person in there who does integration and does all kinds of interesting things. I think it's just memory, and I have a theory of memory that I think makes it very simple and just reactive in effect.
And knowledge would fall under memory.
Yeah, well, so memory includes conceptual, so it includes concepts, it includes values, it includes perceptual memory. So not everything in memory is conceptual, because you do have experiences that are unconceptualized. First of all, from when you were very, very young, but also from sometimes, like there's some work on this, like you're in a car accident and, it happens so fast, that experience gets stored, or like PTSD. The experience gets stored, but it wasn't conceptualized at the time because it happened too fast and, you couldn't do it. And that's actually sometimes to untangle that, you actually need to go look, you need to actually bring up the experience. And this is not my area of expertise, but you need to actually bring it into the rest of your knowledge, because otherwise it's like episodic and unintegrated.
So the field of psycho-epistemology is large. You landed memory system and affect system as your understanding of the subconscious. Can you bring it to practical thinking directions, achieve a goal?
Sure.
Yeah.
Like when I went, right. So this is theory. And I presented it last summer to some people in the thinking lab who were interested, but I will eventually have that worked out in a more objective form. So like, for example, so I actually now think the whole study of psychology is best done in this way, as an interaction between the conscious mind and the automatic functions of memory and affect. So, for example, one of the things this means is this explains how you can, for example, reprogram your value system so that if you have a big goal, you can learn to love the process of achieving the big goal instead of having to just force yourself to do it, because you can manage that interaction to create experiences that will program values. Or you can another thing that's obviously very relevant is, how do you conceptualize, like I mentioned that positive attitude is very important. That's how you conceptualize a circumstance, a situation. I mean, take at the beginning of this call, when you said you were both nervous and excited. Well, that's two different ways of conceptualizing the same situation. You could say, I'm nervous. You're focused on, well, bad things could happen. I might say something that I regret or whatever. Or you could say, I'm excited. This could be an interesting conversation. I haven't talked with Jean before. Those same fact. In both cases, you're talking with me, you haven't talked with me before, it's a little bit of an unknown situation, but in one case, you're focusing on the potential upside, in the other case, you're focusing on the potential downside. And it makes a huge difference with how that experience is filed in your databanks which one you do. And that's all conceptual. So that's an example of the interaction between the conscious mind and the automatic functions of the subconscious.
Wait, but how do you know? I wanted to ask you, how does someone go to love marketing? But let me just, there's a question I find more interesting. I'm going to go with my whim, my donut. Okay, so which is, okay, so we open at the beginning. I say, I'm nervous and excited, but how do you know I was having those thoughts? I don't remember having those thoughts. It was just a bodily feeling.
Ah,
So,
well, I used it to riff on this, right? Okay, but when you have a feeling, there's ideas come from, emotions come from ideas. Now, there are two different ways we experience emotions. Sometimes we experience the emotion and we're not sure what the idea is. And that's when you need to introspect to figure out, well, why do I feel this? So I just made up two things. So you said you were nervous, you said you were excited. I made up why you might be nervous and I made up why you might be excited. It might not be exactly your reason, but it's something close to that, right? I mean, if you think about it, it's something close to that. I mean,
it makes sense. It makes sense. I'm just saying.
Okay. You didn't have those thoughts in your head.
Or if I did, I may not have. It'd just be this feeling of like, what if the heart rate is up and then I just associate it with nervousness or excitement and then that's it? Could it be like just as simple as that?
Well, no, I think emotions are based on values, right? So, I mean, there have been some studies about this. If you don't have an emotion, unless there is an idea associated with it. Now, the idea may not be fully articulated. It could be that you're having, like the way that I look at this is the concepts involved are semi-activated, but not so much that the words have come into mind, but enough so that the values can create an emotion. That's too technical. But then that's when you introspect. You can ask yourself, and for every, nervous is a type of fear. Fear is a basic family of emotion. It means there's some threat to me. If you ever feel fear, worry, anxiety, nervous, 10 other scared, 10 other fear-based emotions, it means you think that there's some threat. And now that may not be obvious to you at first, but if you ask yourself, so why am I feeling fear? And you know that I'm looking for a threat, you will find the threat. This is how you pull it out and you make it be explicit. This is an introspection technique.
But how do you know that if I have a feeling of fear and then I ask, I mentally inquire into it.
Yes.
And then I get
you get an answer, right?
What if I say something weird in the conversation? You're saying that's the cause of the fear, but it just seems like that it's the fear that potentiated that, because I put my attention to the fear and then potentiated the thought. It causally came after, right?
Well, so this has to do with my view of the interaction between the conscious mind, the automatic functions, the subconscious. So emotions come up as an experience, right? Emotions come up as an experience, and emotions are designed to get into awareness and seize your attention. And they are nonverbal. Emotions are nonverbal. They are experiences. But emotions, unlike pure pain, right? Unlike, the feel you have if you get a cut, or the feeling you have, all right, I'm going to use the example that someone pointed out. Orgasm, experience of pure pleasure, right?
That's fine, yeah.
All right, those are physical sensations. Now, maybe orgasm has some other stuff associated with it. But anyway, the point is that emotions have a conceptual basis. They're a product of ideas. Now, how can it be that the experience could be clear and the idea could be not clear? Because you can have the experience that you first have the idea and then you have the emotion. That definitely happens. Like there's an example in OPAR where Leonard Peikoff has a microscope slide and he has 4 different people come to it, and they look at it and they each have an evaluation and then they have an emotion. And it's true. If you have a conscious evaluation, you will then feel an emotion. But a lot of times you have the emotion not having had the thought. And that's when you need to introspect. Now, why do I say that by then asking yourself, why do I think there's a threat? and then getting the answer. Why do I think that is the idea that actually triggered this? Because the way that the memory banks work is that things get activated, and the thing that pops up is the thing that is most easily activated. And so what value has been activated that fear is the emotion that comes from a threat to a value. It means that there's some value that you're aware of, maybe in the background, that's strong enough that it can trigger that emotion. That has to be somewhat activated, or else you would not feel the emotion. And what happens when you ask the introspective question is you activate that stuff a little more and not the other stuff. Like you had 10 other things on your mind when we started. Like, what time do we need to start? Jean came in a few minutes early. Thank you very much, which is something that you said to me before we went on the air. What are the questions I'm going to have? Is my introduction all right? You had 100 things in your mind. But when you ask the introspective question, oh, I notice I'm feeling nervous. What is the threat that I might be feeling nervous about? The things that are closest to that are going to get more activated, and then they will pop into awareness. So it's
the thoughts that are closest,
the thoughts that are
that node or to the fear,
to the idea of what's the threat, right? When you ask a question, it's like you're triangulating. You're saying, how do I explain this in a short way? I have an answer to this, but I don't know if I can say it in a short way, Buck.
I mean, what? So
the point is, you wouldn't have had the emotion if the ideas hadn't been activated, and that's why you can introspect them. An emotion is based on an idea. It's based on a conceptual evaluation. Which has been activated at some level. Maybe not enough that you're aware of it, but you can become self-aware of it by activating that area more. By attention. That's why introspection is so important. That's how you find out your values.
You're saying that when someone has an emotion and they introspect on it, they will learn what they value.
They will learn what thought gave rise to that, what evaluation gave rise to that emotion. And in turn, if it's either going to point right at a value, right? If it's joy, I've gained a value. If it's love, I love this thing. If it's desire, it's I want this value. So the value-oriented emotions point you straight at the value. If it's a threat-based emotion like fear, take this example. I want to. What did we come up with as an example, as a reason you might be nervous? It doesn't have to be real.
I say something weird.
You might say something weird, right? Yeah. So your value, if what you don't want is to say something weird, let's see if we can name what the value is. What you do want. You want to be maybe calm and in control, or maybe erudite, or maybe what's a word for this? I bet you know. What is it that you would like to be? Smooth.
Not nervous. Well,
no, but do you see what I'm saying? I'm trying to name what the positive is.
Right. Okay. Right. So there's signals towards what are positive values.
Well, the nervousness is a point to what you're afraid of. But if it's something you're afraid of, that means you are not afraid. You do not have built into, as a major thing in your psychology, I don't want to be awkward. If you had built into your psychology, I don't want to be awkward, it would be terribly awkward. No, I must not be awkward. You would never run a podcast because you're going to be awkward. You've got a value that is actually causing that. There's a threat to the value, and the value is something like being smooth, polished. What is it that you want? How do you want to show up in this podcast? That's the opposite of awkward.
Actually, a value is just to enjoy, not worry too much about the consequences. It's just to enjoy my time with you, and not so much about gaining.
Okay, but hold on, because this is important. This is definitely my theory, and this is important. Yes, okay. When you come in, you say that's what you want, but you had a feeling of nervousness. And the nervousness, and is it true that you didn't want to say something weird? Is that genuine for you?
I mean, that's a general truth. Like, I don't want to say something weird.
Do you think that could be the cause of your
I do see a lot of weird
nervousness?
things, by the way, in my chat. So I'm used to it. But it's a
But
I just
but hold on. Do you dislike it when you say weird things?
sometimes a little bit.
Okay,
Sometimes it's
right.
kind of fun, but yes, right,
Sometimes it's fun, right? So,
right.
but part of you is like, let's not do that.
Especially because you're an objectivist. With objectivists, I tend to be more like on edge. So I
So, what you want to be is something like you want to be. I'm trying to
I'm
think.
not sure what you're doing exactly. It's I've seen you do it on other YouTube. Keep going, keep going, keep going.
Okay, yeah, it's something along the line of. Uh, well, so I don't want to put a word in your mouth, Bach, but when you said it's something having to do
You
with
can throw out
objectives,
things. Well, I mean,
then it may be that you want to like say things that are that I'm going to accept you. You want to be non-confrontational. You want to be,
there.
I don't know, something like that.
So this is an interesting. If I okay,
It's worth naming this for yourself.
if you're fine with my just free associating right now about.
Sure.
So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot. If I think about nervousness with you, I think there's a lot. There's just baggage with certain objectivists, not you. And there's just a lot of activation around objectivist intellectuals, and there's a lot of history of like. By the way, I have.
You want respect, is I bet what it is.
There could be a desire to be accepted by certain
right. Okay. Yes.
So I know, but those are all right.
So respect, acceptance, and there's something about like organic intelligence is, it has some superficial things that people like the emotionalism thing, right? That people could say, well, this isn't objectivism. How can you be in favor of this, right? You've probably gotten that from some people, right? And so, there's you're worried whether I'm going to be doctrinaire in some way and like jump on you.
Not so much you because I've seen you on
right.
I've watched a lot of your
but it's still I'm an objectivist, so it's right. So what you're
I associate you with objectivism.
Sure, right. Yes, I'm glad. Okay.
Right.
So you see, so you actually want respect, equality, acceptance, dignity. There's something in a social value here that you want that is in fact a little bit at risk, and that if you were to, I mean, I'm just trying to name it for you because I think it's really worth naming it. Yeah.
Because it's worth. You're trying to name it because it's worth naming.
Yes.
Here, let me ask, because I was there's this thought of like, okay, are you saying, well, you can't be? We have feelings throughout the day, so it's only a small subset of the time that we should take time to introspect, right? Because I'll have feelings throughout. Sometimes we just have to live. You can't. It's just that sometimes it's worth pausing. Oh, there's a feeling. I'm going to inquire. But a lot of time they're just floating by, right?
Well, I mean, so here's what I would say.
Okay.
Yes, of course. You have to. You need to live your life.
Yes.
And ideally, 90% of the emotions you have, you totally understand. Like why you want that donut because it will taste good, right? Or I mean, I don't know. 90% of the time you totally know. And like in this particular case, although you said you didn't know why you were nervous, I bet you actually did know why you were nervous. Like you weren't shocked that you were nervous, right?
I feel like you're making more significance of my nervousness than is there.
Yes. Yeah. So just to be clear, the only reason I brought it up was because I needed an example.
Okay.
The only reason I brought it up, not because I was at all worried about you being nervous, and in fact, I tried to make you non-nervous. Right. But then, so in answer to this question, the time that you need to introspect the emotion is when you're surprised by it. It's very important to introspect surprising emotions.
May I? Oh.
And if you have an emotion that is in contradiction to what your conscious conviction is, those are 2 times absolutely crucial, even if it happens 10 times in a row.
Wait, even if what happens 10 times in a row?
Even if this is like you're sitting down, like this is one of the things that can make doing work uncomfortable, is that you have this emotional conflict and you say, okay, what's that about? Blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
And they say, okay, go. And then you have another emotional conflict. Okay, what's that about? And then that actually you need to keep doing. That's actually how you work through the process. So then that would be a lot of introspection, but it would be because this was something that you had decided was an important thing to focus on. Most of your life, you're not doing this.
Okay. In real time right now, there's an example that's very interesting to me about, am I going to pay more attention to this later or not? Or should I or not? Okay. So the example is, it's in my I have a homework assignment I did for your husband 20 years ago.
Okay.
When I was studying epistemology under him, and he mailed me my final exam or whatever with graded comments. I never opened the envelope. It's been sitting in a closet for 20 years. I never opened it because I was scared. And then I felt better, by the way, when Cynthia Peacock said, "That's fine, Bach. I did the same thing." So I have this exam that Harry has put comments on, and your husband, he's super like critical, but yes. I say that benevolently. He's like, yes. So I don't want to be traumatized by what he wrote. And maybe at the time I thought, maybe I knew that my exam wasn't, I didn't master the concept, or I half-assed it, or something like that. Whatever it is, it's in my closet. I didn't throw it away, but right. It's still in the envelope, and I planned on just never opening it ever. I'm just going to die, and then it'll just be there. And then coming into the interview with you, I associate you. Okay. Oh, that's Harry Binswanger.
My husband, if anyone doesn't know, this happens to be my husband.
Her husband is Harry Binswanger, who has graded an exam that I have in my closet that I haven't opened, and it's still in the envelope. It's been 20 years. And part of me is thinking, this is not important. After the call with Gene, I'm just going to ignore it. It'll go away. It doesn't matter. So if he was critical, if he was not critical, who cares? I'm moving. It's 20 years later. Or am I going to keep thinking about this? Like, and then is Jean going to get on me about defense values? Am I going to yell at her about getting on me about defense values? It's all this. So it's a real life example of.
Right. It's a real example.
Yeah, and then so should I just throw it away? But I don't want to throw it away, but I don't want to look at it either. So that's what's in the moment.
Right.
Now, I'm thinking a valid option is just ignore it. Just whatever. Just live life. And another option is maybe I'll open it. But
well, can I give you a third alternative?
Yeah.
Because the way I would look at this is something that actually has been weighing on you a little bit for 20 years. A little bit. Right? Because you didn't throw it away. If you had thrown it away or burned it, I wouldn't be worried about it at all. But you know where it is in the closet.
Right.
Yeah. So which means that it pops up. Like when you run into Harry at a conference, or when you talk to me, it actually pops up, and it's like a little bit of conflict over it, right?
Yeah, but that's going to be very. I mean, when you say it's been an issue for 20 years, I think that's an exaggeration. It's popped up for a few minutes at a time.
Oh, I agree.
Right.
I totally agree. And the reason. So yes, you haven't been focused on this for 20 years straight. It's occurred to you maybe 5 times in the last 20 years.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, right. Great. Terrific. When something like this, I think of this as unfinished business, right? When something like this pops up, it's because there's something that, so as to what you do right now, it's totally your choice. And I totally understand why you might have hesitated to look at it initially. Yeah. What I would say, like from just a psychological point of view, is that this is something where the benefit of learning to introspect is that the third alternative is you could introspect why you don't want to open it. And you could actually get in and find out what the values are there. There are some of it is clear and some of it is not clear, but it's not resolved. And the way that you can tell it's not resolved is that it still comes up and has the power to create a little bit of contradictory emotion. And the thing that happens when you do a written introspection process is that you get to go a little deeper than what just the top of mind part is. So, like, for example, you know, I don't want to psychologize you. So and I feel like I might have made you feel like I was psychologizing you earlier. So I don't want to like pick on the things you said. But if you just take a transcript of what you said here, any one of those things, you could go a little deeper and figure out, oh yeah, this means, like, for example, it probably relates to what you thought about the course and how important the course was to you, and your relationship with Harry and how important that was, and the how this related to your view of other things. You know, you could profitably spend 15 minutes about why you have these mixed emotions about this test. And one of two things would happen as a result of that. Well, that's oversimplifying, but you might decide, you know, actually, I really want to know because that class was important to me, and I want to know I could still learn something from whatever those comments are, and it doesn't matter to me if he didn't think I did a good job, right? Or you could decide, you know, it really doesn't matter to me, and I'm really proud of the fact that I decided that that I didn't need that, and I didn't need that feedback, that I've carried on, and that's not an important issue for me, and I'm going to prove that to myself by shredding this letter. And that's going to actually just let this go for me. And that's going to be wonderful. Or the third alternative is you could decide, I don't know what's going on here, and I don't have to know, so I'm just going to leave the letter in the closet. You could do any of those things, but if you did any of them, you would understand your own reaction better.
Yes. Yes. And I think one point I was trying to sell you on maybe is, or to get your feedback on is, I'll have a lot of emotions all over the place in life. So I know this is maybe a repeat point, but you don't have to and can't and shouldn't just isolate every emotion, introspect, right? You have to be selective. I'm repeating points, I know.
Just like every other part of life, you have to prioritize. You need to prioritize. And if you have a lot of conflict in your life, I'm not saying this is the case for you, but if you have a lot, then it probably means that it's really worth learning to introspect and start working through it. Because here's the thing, like this is a small thing, right? This is one little envelope from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But we all have things like this speech that I've mentioned. In that speech, I think I'm finally resolving something that also happened about 30 years ago. Actually, well, so maybe it's 40 years ago, because it's 40 years ago. It's before I met Harry. And, and it's something I actually thought I resolved in 1990. So it's from a long time ago. And, so it's from the late 80s. Okay. This is from a long time ago. And yet it's still been on my mind, and it still has caused, when I thought about it, I didn't really feel good about it. And this particular incident, I actually think I finally have gotten to the bottom of. And it's very, very helpful that I've gotten to the bottom of it. My point is, so I see that I lost my point, because my real point was, if you have a lot of these, it really decreases your quality of life. And, and if you have the attitude of, if I have a conflict over something, I want to resolve it, there are a limit to the number of conflicts you have. There are a finite number of conflicts that are stored in your databanks. And if you start resolving them one at a time, you have fewer. Ayn Rand says, distinguishes joy and suffering, right? The opposite of happiness is suffering. A fellow that I studied with at one point named P.J. Eby said, suffering is a divided mind. I think that's right. I think conflict is the essence of suffering. The minor version of suffering is conflict. And then deeper suffering is deeper. But if you have a lot of little conflict, you are living in suffering. That is not a happy state. And those can only be resolved by introspection and figuring out what your values are and making a decision about what you wanted, what matters to you most now here in this life, and acting on it. That's what resolves the conflict.
Wait, A
And
conflict is when you're pulled in two or
two
more directions.
directions. Yeah. Like you're pulled in two directions to read the note or to throw it away or to not read it or whatever.
Okay, so here's what
And
about the oh yeah.
so I think we do need to tie this up.
Yeah. So I have some big picture questions I'll ask you, but do you have tie-up remarks that you want to say on the spot?
So we've gone on in a lot of different
I can
directions.
also ask you my big
go ahead.
questions. Okay.
Okay. So, all right.
My big questions.
Yeah. Okay.
What are your views on comfort versus discomfort, effort versus non-effort? There's a line in John Galt's speech where Ayn Rand said, "You have no choice about the fact that life is a struggle. The question is it going to be a struggle for your happiness or a struggle to practice self-sacrifice?" Do you think life is inherently a struggle? Do you think discomfort is fundamental or fundamental-ish to life? It's not one. It's kind of a bag of
Right.
yeah.
So I actually don't agree with the term struggle in that. So that this is something that I think Ayn Rand focuses a little bit too much on struggle. I don't think struggle. That's not. I do rebel against that, as you may. The thing that I think is right. Like I would be happy if she put in the word effort there. So I'm pro-effort. You can be pro-effort. Anti-effort is self-destructive. If you are opposed to effort, that is going to just if you're opposed to effort, you're just going to go by emotions. The default is go by emotions, and that spirals into a vicious cycle. It always does. So I am definitely pro-effort. Now I'm also pro-comfort, which I do think is a different issue, right? I mean that you need to have the thing I'd say is you've got to have pleasure in your life. You do need to be to live does require effort. It absolutely requires effort. It should not require over effort, right? I mean, it should not require effort beyond your capacity. You use your brain to figure out how to develop your capacity you take your current capacity to develop your capacity. And you do that in a way that is sustainable. And that brings you more ways to get pleasure, more ways to have happiness, and more ways to create things on this planet. That's what I'm in favor of.
What you just said there sounds so organic intelligence. It was like eerie to hear, but okay, so.
But it's conceptualized very differently.
No, I wasn't saying that. I didn't
right.
imply at all.
Yes.
Right. It's just
which I do think is which I think is important. That's why I see the parallels between us.
So, right. Okay. So I just want to reflect and make sure I get it, and to reinforce what you're saying, to make sure that you're saying so. You're pro-effort and pro-pleasure and pro-comfort. You're not loving Rand's use of the term struggle when she said you have no choice about the fact that life is a struggle. You would prefer it requires effort, which you're pro, and you want to use your effort without going over capacity and build your capacity through actions that are within capacity.
Yes.
Sustainably.
And strategically. Yes.
To enjoy life.
Yeah, happiness is the purpose of life.
Happiness is the purpose of life.
That I got from Ayn Rand. She helped me a lot with that.
Okay, in one of your lectures, and this is I'm still closing. We're closing. Okay.
Okay, good.
But before, actually, I'll ask you. But I'm going to ask you the question. But let me just say thank you, Jean, for chatting with me. I very much enjoyed it, and I appreciate it. So
yeah. It's taken a little bit of effort for us to actually communicate because the language is a little bit different, and I've got a bunch of views that are not necessarily totally objective, and So it's taken a little bit of work for us to communicate, but I think we have
Yes.
some progress in this regard. So yes,
Oh,
it's
the question.
worth the effort.
Thank you. Could you quickly just what is effort again? Just as you were, what is effort?
Well, effort. I'd say volitional effort. It's almost an axiomatic concept in the sense that it's your turning your mental stuff to do something.
Just very quickly then, if I'm watching a show and I'm bored of it, I want to close it down and search and go to another show on Netflix, that would be effort, you're saying? That's an example of effort.
Well, you could do that with or without effort. So you could do that on autopilot. So autopilot is not effort.
Oh, why didn't we begin? Oh, we should have. Dang. Okay, too bad we're out of time. All right. Okay, so
autopilot is not effort. If you do it on autopilot, I would always say at least check.
Wait, what about autopilot strength training? So that's effort, right? Or
autopilot strength training?
Like I'm gonna do my workout in the same usual way. I'm not gonna think. I'm just gonna do my 3 sets of this. Actually, we should. I know we should be closing, but
so there are. Okay. So
go ahead.
Yeah, this is opening up a new topic.
Yeah, I didn't mean to.
I'll just say.
We don't have to.
So I don't believe in going by habit. Okay, you want to build habits so that something is the routine. You want to have a routine. So this is the thing. This is the path of least resistance. But you monitor it and you say, yes, I'm going to the gym. Yay, me. And you celebrate a little bit. That is not an autopilot activity. That is, yes, this is the easy path. And I could do this on autopilot, but instead of doing it on autopilot, I notice I'm doing it and I celebrate it. Or I notice, 1 second, the gym is closed today, so I need to do plan B. So let's not stay on autopilot. So I just have a little bit of monitoring, not a lot, but a little bit of monitoring so that I'm not just defaulting into the world by what's automatic. Yeah.
Had we time, I would really want to. Okay, but thank you. Okay, so effort is not autopilot. Is the essential that you just done. Yes. Okay. Yeah. My final question to you is: in one of your lectures, you said happiness is not an emotion.
Not an emotion per se.
Oh,
that's the first line.
I felt it kind of. I don't remember you saying per se.
I definitely said per se. It's the opening line. Happiness is not an emotion per se. It's a product of emotions. It's a product of emotions. So there are a lot of emotions involved in happiness, but it's an ongoing state of value achievement, which involves a lot of positive emotions. But it's not like joy, desire, love. It's not like an experience that you have. An emotion is something that comes and goes relatively quickly. Happiness is an ongoing positive affect state, which is dominated by positive emotions. So that's why Ayn Rand's definition is it's the state of consciousness proceeding from the achievement of one's values, which is a positive state and has a lot of positive emotion in it. But an emotion is a shorter term thing. Happiness is an ongoing long-term state.
I said that would be my last question, but
but you lied. You lied, Bach. You lied. I'm teasing.
Maybe, but so would you say it's not possible to have happiness as a baseline state, because it's a state that proceeds from the achievement of value? So yeah, can you speak to? That was the last one. That was the last question.
So I actually have a whole series of articles on the concept of happiness on my blog, which I gave a lecture on. I gave 2 lectures on that. And there's about 3 times as much material on the blog. The material from the lectures is here plus others. But the point is, I think everyone has kind of a baseline happiness, and what their baseline happiness is like a duty cycle. Are you in a positive affect? Are you neutral or positive 50% of the time, 80% of the time? Nobody is in positive affect all the time. It is not possible, and it would be self-destructive because you need to have negative emotions, right? I mean, they alert you to situations that you need to
Yeah.
be aware of.
Yeah.
The question is, how fast can you recover if something bad happens? And do you have control over that, or do you get into a funk for 5 days, right? So, what I would say your baseline happiness is determined by like the duty cycle. Excuse me, that's a technical engineering term. It's like what percentage are you down versus what percentage are you up on a regular basis. If you think you go up and down, is most of the time you're up and part of the time you're down? What percentage is that? And that's what I would say. And I think you can shoot for like 80% up. I'd say that would be like an ideal state of happiness. I think that'd be great.
Okay. Use effort within capacity, go for pleasure, go for happiness, go for values that promote your happiness, grow capacity through this kind of effortful, sometimes uncomfortable, predominantly pleasurable life activity.
Yes.
Is
Yes. Great.
okay. Thank you, Jean Moroney, very much.
Thank you, Buck. Thank you for having me on your show. Okay. All right. Great.